Good day, students. I hope you are having a very good day today. My name is Sanmarie Steenkamp and I'll be doing the presentation on Life Skills 3 for the BEd Honours Degree in Education. This is a Year 1, Semester 1 subject, and this is exam-based for the August 2017 exam. Alright, just an outline of the presentation. I will be looking at some aspects in each and every unit in your study guide. Please also be aware, just to make a few notes before we go further, that even though I focus on some aspects in all of the units, that doesn't mean you only need to study those. It is expected of you to know your study guide, to know all of your materials. All right, so as you can see, there's 8 units in your study guide, which ranges from policy features of life skills in Namibia. Then it works its way through the senior primary phase, junior secondary phase, senior secondary phase, and then we go over to the roles and responsibility of the life skills teacher, the phases of evolution of the world of work and career counseling theories, relationship of multiple intelligences with life skills and career counseling, and elements of daily classroom processes to develop life skills. All right, so let's continue to Unit 1. So Unit 1, we will focus on the value of life skills to learners and also purpose of a scheme of work. The World Health Organization defines life skills as the abilities or adaptive and positive behavior that enables individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. So here we see that life skills is about the ability of individuals to deal with daily life and everyday challenges that they might find. When we move on to the purpose of a scheme of work, so this is specifically aimed at the teacher, then the scheme of work can be seen as a flexible document that should be a teacher's most useful tool to assist him or her on how to change things for the next year. So a scheme of work goes for the period from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. So all of your work that you plan to do for the entire year will be put inside of your scheme of work. In life skills, the scheme of work should indicate work to be covered in all 3 domains. And these 3 domains is career guidance, daily living skills, and personal social skills. So for all 3 terms, you will have something that is covered in all 3 of these domains. We move on to the differences between teacher-centered learning and learner-centered learning. All right, so when we look at the teacher-centered paradigm compared to the learner-centered paradigm, we see that the teacher-centered paradigm focuses more on providing learners with information. In other words, the learners become a little bit more passive and the teacher just gives them the information. With the learner-centered approach, we know that the focus is on the learner, and the learner gains knowledge through gathering and putting together information and integrating it with the skills of inquiring, communicating, making decisions, thinking and problem solving. So in other words, the learners are much more active when it comes to learning. The emphasis is on acquisition of knowledge provided by the textbook in the teacher-centered approach. So you have your textbook and that is what you'll learn, and that's where it ends. Where the learner-centered approach, the emphasis is on using and communicating knowledge in real-life context. So it's a much more practical way in the learner-centered approach. We move on to Unit 2, and we're going to look a little bit at learning styles here. Every learner that you will have in your class will have a different learning style. Some of them may have more than one of these. They might have all 3. However, one might be more dominant than the other 2. You might even have those that have 2 that's more dominant than another one. Why is it important to know what learning style your learners have? It is important to assist you in how you're going to present your class. It will help you to assist the learners to learn better and learn more. So there are 3 types of learning styles. You get the visual learning style. As the word visual says, it has to do with vision. In other words, predominantly using the eyes to learn, and also watching the teacher as the teacher explains things. These students are many times quite creative, and they like to use color and drawings to help them remember what they are learning. The auditory learning style, auditory referring to hearing, which means the learner is more active in learning when he listens to the teacher. And this will have to be repeated. So repeatedly saying the things that the that the learner has to learn. And also what helps for these learners is if they say out loud what they are learning so that they can hear themselves. The last one is the kinesthetic or tactile learning style. This means a learner has to feel, touch, or move around. They probably struggle to sit still, and they prefer to do things rather than to listen to someone else, so that they can put the information more deeply into their memories. All right. Unit 3, we will look at motivation and factors that have influence on motivation. Motivation is extremely important aspect in life skills. If your learners are not motivated, they will struggle to learn. So what is motivation? Motivation can be seen as the desire to do things. It is the difference between getting up early on a morning or just lazing around the home. It is crucial for setting and attaining goals. This is not only within the school setting, but in general life. So factors that may have an influence on your learners' motivation is love and acceptance, the home environment, poverty, parents' expectations, the parents' expectations of school, and also cultural beliefs. I think what's important to remember here, just in line with the upcoming exams, is that I just want to repeat, I cannot cover everything that's in the exam. So some points are lifted out and others you need to go and read a bit more about. Make sure you understand what you are learning. We are going to move on to effective listening. Effective listening is important for studying. You need to listen to what the lecturer or teacher is saying. You also need to listen to what your employer or your partner tells you. Types of listening that we get is informative listening, memory, relationship listening, appreciative listening, critical listening, and discriminative listening. So when we look at these types of listening, it would be important for you to make sure that you understand what each of these types of listening mean. Get a general feel for it and understand it. All right, Unit 5, we look at the purpose of a counseling support group at school and the role of the life skills teacher. As we know, the life skills teacher is probably one of the most taxing jobs in a school, because you have to focus on the class as a whole, but also on the individual learners. So life skills teachers are really an essential part of the school counseling support. The guidance and counseling policy for schools generally recommends that, when necessary, specific attention is to be provided by specialized staff, such as educational psychologists, to the needs of vulnerable learners like orphans, children affected by abuse or HIV/AIDS, and others. Therefore, the role of the life skills teacher is an integrated part of counseling support for learners. The responsibilities of life skill teachers of both primary and secondary school involve the following. Although it's not everything. This is some of the things that it involves. This part in your study guide is much longer. Make sure that you read through everything. So the responsibilities of the life skill teacher includes teaching life skills curriculum from grade 5 to 7 and grades 8 to 12. Providing guidance and support in career and schooling options. Taking responsibility for the administration of life skills, such as stipulated in the life skills subject policy and policy for non-promotional subjects. Counseling learners to monitor the keeping of records on counseling done and complete the school summary register on counseled cases. Being responsible for the coordination, request and dispatching of cumulative record cards. Unit 6, we will look shortly at the attitudes and the workplace. So we are moving more into the career counseling at the moment. Examples of good employee behavior include respect and value for your fellow employees, a positive can-do attitude, and with this comes motivation, courteous and friendly behavior, you're able to meet your deadlines, you take responsibility for your job, so you don't expect anybody else to do your work, and good attendance and punctuality. Right, Unit 7, we're going to look at the pillars of learning. This is a very important part in your study guide, and do make sure that you understand the 4 pillars and that you know how that they fit into life skills. It is important to note that the 4 pillars of learning relate to all phases and areas of education. They support and interpret one another and should therefore be applied as basic principles, cross-cutting themes and generic competences for integrating in and across subject areas or learning domains. In other words, these 4 pillars work together and they flow over into each other and literally work together. They do not work apart or separately. So the 4 pillars is learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, and learning to be. When we look at learning to know, this type of learning implies the mastering of the instruments of knowledge themselves. Acquiring knowledge is a never-ending process and can be enriched by all forms of experience. Learning to know presupposes learning to learn, calling upon the power of concentration, memory, and thought, so as to benefit from ongoing educational opportunities continuously arising, formally and non-formally, throughout life. Learning to do is the pillar of learning that implies the application of what learners have learned or known into practices. So we're taking the learning to know into the practical world. It is closely linked to vocational technical education and work skills training. However, it goes beyond narrowly defined skills development for doing specific things or practical tasks in traditional or industrial economies. Learning to do calls for new types of skills, focusing more on behavioral than intellectual skills. So this is literally from knowing to practical. Learning to live together. In the context of an increasing globalization, this pillar implies an education taking 2 complementary paths. On one level, discovery of others and one another, experience of shared purposes throughout life. Specifically, it implies the development of such qualities as the following: knowledge and understanding of self and others, appreciation of the diversity of the human race, and an awareness of similarities between and the interdependence of all humans. So this has very much to do with the self and with others and how these 2 go together, that we are not apart but we are all one. Right. Learning to be. This type of learning was conceptualized out of the fear that the world would be dehumanized as a result of technical change. It's based on the principle that the aim of development is the complete fulfillment of man in all richness of his personality, the complexity of his forms of expression, and his various commitments. Learning to be may therefore be interpreted in one way as learning to be human through acquisition of knowledge, skills, values conducive to personality development in its intellectual, moral, cultural, and physical dimensions. So learning to be seems to encompass all of the aspects of being human. The last unit, we are looking at supporting learners with learning difficulties or disabilities. So some general strategies that you can follow to help you with this task of working with learners with learning disabilities or difficulties may include teach using the learner's strength, which means you will need to find out first what parts are the learners strong in. Know the mode through which the learner learns best. In other words, are you dealing with a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner? Make sure print material is at the learner's reading level. I also want to include here not only the learner's reading level. Should you be dealing maybe with a learner who is visually impaired or struggles to see, you may have to print out or copy their materials, say on an A3 size paper, to make it bigger for them to see. Encourage learners to develop their special talent. This will help the learner experience success and thus improve self-esteem. This is extremely important for learners with learning difficulties. Many of them are aware that they struggle, so boosting their self-esteem would be essential to their learning experience. Provide repetition when teaching new concepts and skills. So don't rush through the work. Make sure that the learner understands the basics before you move on to the next part. All right, qualities a life skill teacher needs to comply with in order to be a good life skills teacher is to be accountable. In other words, you take responsibility for what you are doing in class. To be adaptable. This is very important because you're not working only with a class, you're also working with individuals. So being able to understand each individual, you have to be adaptable. Caring, compassionate, cooperative, creative, and dedicated. That brings us to the end of this presentation. Following is my contact information. It's my email address, sanmariesteenkamp@gmail.com. My cell phone number is 081 2222 133. And the hours that you can contact me is between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. weekdays. Please take serious note of this. Many of the students contact me during working hours where I don't have any of the materials with me or I am busy with work-related issues. I wish you the best of luck and make sure that you cover all the material in your study guide.